5 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. It's Ger and Owen with you every morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10. It's time for the pressure rankings.
You put them under pressure.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
Pressures for tyres, Owen. Who's under pressure this week?
We're going 5-1. Somebody who's not under pressure, actually, we should start off with, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is Wales. No pressure whatsoever on Wales. I'm not sure if you want to weigh in on their omission first.
Well, they're just rubbish, isn't that it? They've fallen so far in the stocks of this show that they don't even merit a mention on the week where we're going to thrash them. Like, not been a very happy hunting ground for us. Was it Sidoli wrestling and punching Paul O'Connell when Wales won a Grand Slam, and they taunted us forever after it with the coach that we stabbed in the back, according to his own words. We basically gifted them Warren Gatland and their greatest ever era. So, you know, it's going to be sweet, sweet, sweet music in the valleys when we beat them this weekend.
I'm not even sure if you could go as far as calling it sweet, because they just don't register this week on the top five. Are they significant at all, would be my question. Let's get on to some of the actual countries that matter in this year's Six Nations. And at number 5, we're going to go with a few Irish names here. First of all, at number 5 is Paul O'Connell. I think that because of the name that he is, the profile that he has, there is immediate pressure on him, because I don't know, his CV has been held up and people have questioned, rightly I guess, the CV that he's already earned, and perhaps people have asked a question about whether or not he would have got this job without being Paul O'Connell. But I do wonder if somebody who is retired from the game, what was it, 2016, less than 5 years since his retirement, deserves a bit of a break. If you look at the actual people he has at his disposal in the forwards for Ireland, it's a back row that is still very deep. There are players coming back. You had Dan Levy back at the weekend. He could play down the line maybe this calendar year for Ireland. You've got a second row in James Ryan. Who is you? You are looking at the new you, Paul O'Connell. All you've got to do is make this guy as good as you. And the one pressure zone really is your hooker. If you can nail the throw on the line out, the rest should follow suit. That is the one area where you look at and you say there could be a bit of a problem there. But at the same time, it's a very fixable thing. And there is pressure on him. But I do wonder if quickly it's going to lift. And that's why he's in at number 5 rather than any higher up on the list.
Is there a little bit... So I don't think he's under pressure immediately, because they've brought him in because obviously they felt like they needed something. And if you think about how the whole coaching ticket worked, the head coach left and Andy Farrell ascended to that gig, and Andy Farrell's gig had been then taken by Simon Easterby, who was already doing forwards. So he took forwards and defence. And now they've taken the forwards bit off Simon Easterby and he's just defence. But you are working still for somebody who's considered a defensive guru as the head coach. Now, obviously, the head coaching job is so much bigger than that, and you can't be doing the nuts and bolts of the defence. But you're getting your homework checked every day, no doubt, if you're Simon Easterby, by the boss. I'd say he's under a bit more pressure, really, if Ireland's defence isn't great. He's had the forwards, which was his main gig, under Joe Schmidt, taken away. And so, all of a sudden, you're like, OK, you've got Paul O'Connell, who they're not going to get rid of straight away, who they're going to give a bit of time to do. So,
yeah,
you know, that was also
Can I just clarify?
O'Driscoll mentioned in the background as well, that, like, you know, if it's not Andy Farrell, it might be the backroom team.
Pressure doesn't necessarily mean you're under pressure with your job. That's not what I'm saying here at all. And I think when we do pressure rankings for managers in the Premier League, that's naturally what it is. I'm talking about the pressure that's on Paul O'Connell because he is Paul O'Connell. And if you're parsing through the coaching ticket in 8 to 10 weeks' time after a poor Six Nations, if that's what transpires, I just wonder if his name is going to be plucked out quicker than it would have been if he's not Paul O'Connell. Yeah. And that's why I have him on the pressure ranking. He's under no immediate job threat. This isn't the threat rankings. This is just pressure. Yeah. And they're separate things. And I'm sure
just briefly, I'm sure he's putting himself under his own pressure on that as well. But Sean O'Brien, in a piece last week, talked about how the maul is something that Ireland have not used properly in the last 18 months. So obviously we have, you know, in our mind's eye, we see Paul O'Connell driving the Irish maul and being in the middle of that and like, mauler in chief. So like, if we can have some mauls and consistency in the line out, then that's a massive win and you're immediately pointing to it. So let's wait and see. But yeah.
I think Easterby's a good shout, but I've gone for Mike Catt at number 4. just because of how Ireland's attack has approached things over the last little while. And I think Alan Quinlan almost touched on this exact point a couple of minutes ago when he was uncertain himself about how Ireland are actually going to approach things in attack. It seems that there's uncertainty about what Conor Murray is going to be instructed to do. Is he going to box kick? Is he not going to box kick? Is Johnny Sexton going to kick a lot more from 10? It seems there's a bit of uncertainty about that. And sure, as he said, as Quinlan said, there is pressure on the players to ensure that this goes well. But there is also pressure on your attack coach on what the actual philosophy is. And I know Matt Williams has hammered this quite a lot over the last few months, this idea of heads-up rugby. We're hearing it, and we have heard it quite a bit from the Ireland camps over the last year. And Matt Williams would make the point that heads-up rugby suggests a lack of a plan. Now, the counterpoint to all of this is that the heads-up rugby has actually has ended up in Ireland scoring quite a few tries. You'll remember it was a Big Fat Crappy Quiz of the Year question last year, who scored the most tries in the Six Nations. And Ireland had actually finished joint top in terms of scoring the most tries, despite the mood music around the camp being, well, we haven't got our attack humming. Now, I think you can probably challenge the 17 tries a little bit, and you can say that when you look at their attack against France and England, only one of those tries came in the first half, that they needed the game to break down a little bit in the second halves of those games for their attack to get into full flow. Two of those tries, they scored a try when the clock was in the red beyond the 80th minute in both of those games. Again, the game had opened up by, you remember the chip kick against France that led to the opportunity for the final try in the Six Nations. Those are the sort of things that Ireland have been doing, the heads-up rugby, the innovation and the off-the-cuff nature of their play. But what is their plan? What are they going to do when they have ball in hands in the first minute of the game at the weekend? What is their attacking philosophy? And for that reason, I think Cat is under a degree of pressure.
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to be when people don't. I don't know. It's a very technical game. People don't fully understand exactly why one team snuffs out another team, and you look over and you see the tries that we conceded last year. Remember the one that England ran the length of the pitch, and like, why can't we do that? Well, and England did it once, and all of a sudden they're world leaders. But actually, England are nothing if not a Joe Schmidt prototype team. That's, you know. Oh, look at those. Remember those times when we used to have Joe Schmidt as our head coach? So what's next?
Number 3, we've got Ross Byrne and Billy Burns. Byrne and Burns. Because of the fact that you mentioned Harry Byrne there with Alan, we know that Joey Carberry is coming back to fitness, and if there is an autumn series this year, he's probably going to figure. And we know that there are 2 other really talented out-halves coming out of Munster at the moment. This could be, the lads are 25 and 26, I think, so there's no such thing as a last chance saloon for them just yet. But this is a really good opportunity for them to put their hand up and say to Andy Farrell, listen, I am better than the other guy. If you are Ross Byrne, you want to say I'm better than Billy Burns, because if there is another person in the mix, if Joey Carberry does reinstate himself as number 2 out-half, you want to be the person that survives. Johnny Sexton isn't getting any younger. There are going to be minutes, significant minutes against Italy, you'd imagine, decent minutes against Scotland, and probably good minutes off the bench for 15-20 in a lot of the other games as well. This is a massive opportunity for one of these players to bolt ahead of the other, but for the sake of this, it is pressure because there is a world in which you see neither of these players being a part of the Ireland squad next year. That is the grimmest possible outcome. I'm sure that one or both of them will probably still have a lot to say about that in 12 months' time. But I do think the opportunity to actually put your hand up and say, I am the successor to Johnny Sexton, now is the time to be doing that, especially when there's a couple of injuries or a little bit of inexperience elsewhere in the position. We're going to move on very quickly then to the last couple of points in this morning's pressure rankings. And really, we just can't hold a candle to these teams. At number 2, it is France, the 2023 World Cup champions. And at number 1 is England, the 2023 World Cup champions. Just 2 fabulous, fabulous teams. We just can't possibly hope to match these 2 teams. And what a story it would be if we even managed to score a try against them.
But at least Wales aren't under any pressure because they're still rubbish. That's this week's pressure rankings.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.